on this computer. All right, welcome everybody to another episode. Today is July 25th. The summer's going by fast, 2022. And today I'm pleased to have Carl Johnson with me. Carl and I met on social media, basically having common interests in exercise. And Carl's been very supportive in looking at my entries and liking my Facebook things and watching my YouTube videos. And as I got to know Carl a little bit more, I thought it would be interesting to have him on a podcast. So a little bit about Carl, and I'll get him to correct or confirm me, add to afterwards. So Carl had a career in the Air Force. He retired about 20 years ago as a senior master sergeant. He got a degree while in the Air Force in healthcare management and worked in that area. And that was about 20 years ago. When he left the Air Force, he went back to school, went to Brigham Young University, where he got a degree in exercise science. He's also been a tennis player since he was 13 years old, played at the junior level, and actually worked his way through college teaching tennis. And today also works teaching tennis at a club, local club where you work now. And is recently starting his own personal training, or I prefer the term exercise instruction business, where he is located, which is in, I know it's Utah, and I'm forgetting the name of the community. I apologize.
It's Saratoga Springs.
Saratoga Springs. All right. So what did I miss? What do you need to add, or just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, that was pretty good. So some more information was I was pretty much an aerobic addict growing up. Also, I did a lot of running, a lot of cycling, raced bicycles, did a lot of cross-country skiing, mainly aerobics. I dabbled in some health strength and some strength training here and there, but not very much.
So interestingly, you use the term aerobics rather than cardio or steady state. When my first venture, and the one debt that I will give to Dr. Cooper, I'm forgetting his first name now.
Kenneth Cooper.
Who?
Kenneth Cooper.
Kenneth Cooper, yes. Because when I first started my thing with exercise, it really started by reading that book, which I think was published in 1968, Aerobics. Mm-hmm. And I was off to the races, doing everything from swimming to jogging to playing hockey and everything else. Later on, of course, that evolved. Were you influenced? Because I'm guessing you and I were peers, and that book was revolutionary at the time, although maybe for the wrong reasons, but it certainly got a lot of people exercising. Were you also influenced by that book?
Yes, yeah, to a big degree, yes. Mm-hmm.
So I remember that, of course, the idea, if I remember correctly, because it was a long time ago, is you were supposed to there was a point system, and your goal was to get 30 points a week, and you got so many points for different activities and different lengths of time. But the idea was the more you did, the better. Mm-hmm. Right? If you and to me, I thought if you get 30 points, you're going to be an athlete. If you're going to get 130 points, you're going to be a super athlete, right?
Yes.
So anyways, I jumped into your train of thought. So you were very involved with those types of activities.
Yes, yeah. One thing that's very interesting is that while I was in the Air Force, one of the jobs I worked in while in healthcare management was as the assistant director of the Health and Wellness Center for the medical center, which was actually located in the fitness center. And I talked my way into getting they call it TDY, a temporary duty assignment, to go somewhere for a course or something, into going down to Cooper's Aerobics Center in Dallas, Texas, right, to actually get a personal training certification, which was completely different from aerobics. So it was on strength training. So the Air Force sent me there for a week. It was great. And that was actually my first certification in strength training. It was actually from the Cooper Aerobics Center. That's just a side note.
Interesting. Hey, just, I'm having a memory right now. Wasn't Kenneth Cooper himself former Air Force?
He was.
Right.
He was. Yeah, there was a big time there.
So now you did all those things. I assume that you're doing not as much or any steady state activities today. Obviously, you're playing tennis,
Hmm.
but what led you to sort of go away from there? Were there any injuries involved or?
Well, I still do some aerobic cardio training.
Right.
I find it meditative, relaxing. I don't know. I don't do it near what I used to do. I was a United States Cycling Federation certified cycling coach also, and really did a lot of racing and raced for some number of teams in the Air Force. And but the reason I kind of backed away from aerobic training in general is I came down with a lot of heart arrhythmias,
Okay.
which they're finding that, a lot of distant marathoners, triathletes, aerobic athletes are really coming down with those kinds of injuries, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I ended up having an ablation done, and that somewhat helped with the arrhythmias, with the AFib mainly, but I have a number of other ones and some PVCs and stuff. And just recently, they've been acting up again, unfortunately, because I had the ablation like 13 years ago. So that's been a while. But that led me to look, what else could I do where I wasn't hammering my body, for multiple hours on end daily. And I think it was on the Ben Greenfield podcast I'd heard about Doug McGuff in his book, Body by Science. So I picked that up, read it, kind of thought, hey, that's an interesting concept, but more or less dismissed it.
Right.
I said, I was doing a lot of just, 3 sets of, 10 to 12 and so forth, with progression and using bands and weights and all kinds of stuff. But then I can't remember what turned me on to reading it again, but I reread the book and it started to make a lot more sense. So I really dove into the HIIT community and looking for things. And I think that's when I found Lawrence Neal's podcast, a number of others on HIIT, and started really reading everything I could get my hands on, Ken Hutchins' books, and I read all the Drew Bay's books. I just started studying like crazy and started implementing that, in my life and my training regimen. And I've really enjoyed it. It's been good for me to not do as much cardio, but to really supplement it with strength training.
Okay. Now, when you mentioned, just going back a little bit on the arrhythmia, when you first had that, did you connect it as being caused or contributed to because of what you had been doing, or at the time were you thinking, geez, I've been doing everything right, this is just a bit of a raw deal, or did you make because today it's becoming more, a little bit more common knowledge that those things are, happen to people who are ultra marathoners. But at the time, you said that was 13 years ago. Did you make a connection then, or did you think you just got a bad luck of the draw?
Yeah, I thought I just got the bad luck of the draw. Heart disease runs in my family. My father had a heart attack, eventually died of a stroke. His 3 brothers died of heart disease. So it runs in my family. So I'd been trying all my life to eat right, at least as far as, the mainstream tells you to, on the food guide pyramid. And I tried. Aerobic exercise was supposed to be the cure-all for that, right? If you did enough aerobic exercise, you'd never have a heart attack or have heart issues. And so I did all that. So I kind of did feel really gypped when I came down with that. Just thinking like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, and here this, comes out of nowhere. Since then, I've learned, studied, and heard more, and like you said, it's come more to the forefront now that a lot of people who do that for a living or who hammer every day in, day out that's a complication of that. It just overstresses the heart way too much and the arrhythmias go crazy. So it's funny. I was talking with my cardiologist and told him, yeah, but I don't have heart disease. And he goes, oh, yes, you do. But it's just the electrical variety.
Right.
So it's just, yeah, I thought I got a bum deal. I still think I got a bum deal.
Sure.
But through the ablation and some medications and change in my lifestyle, I adopted a few years ago. I started having some other health issues. I was diagnosed with chronic pancreatitis and I had my gallbladder removed. I had some other gastro things going on. And so they did some tests and my gastroenterologist, to my surprise, because most doctors don't tell you to change your diet. They'll just give you some pill and move you on your way. But he told me maybe I should change my diet. And he said to check out Mark Daily Apple from Mark Sisson and the paleo diet and so forth. So I got involved with that and I ended up losing 100 pounds because during the time when I was having the arrhythmias, I couldn't do much of anything at that time.
Right.
And I don't know, I was just, and that was just after I had left healthcare management in the civilian sector and was really stressed out and not really getting the exercise I should have got. And I put on a lot of weight. But I ended up losing 100 pounds after doing that, feeling so much better. I actually got off of all of my heart meds and was doing well. And then out of the clear blue, it seems like every couple of years, I end up in the ER in a full-blown arrhythmia, and they have to do cardioversion where they put you out and they shock you back into rhythm.
Right.
And and in fact, over the Memorial Day weekend, that happened. Unfortunately, it just seemed like it'd been a couple of years, and they had to do that. Which led to last week I had to have a cardiac MRI because my electrophysiologist, my cardiologist said that my heart was enlarged. That's the fourth one of those I've had, and it showed some enlargement each time, and that's not good. So they're thinking that I'm still having some issues there. So I don't know if it's anything I'm ever going to get away from.
Well, I think, one of the things I did a bit of a thing on is, the fitness industry, of course, when I say an industry, they're selling, right? We are selling, right? I'm a personal trainer. But the way I look at it is this: I'm from the insurance industry, and we sold critical illness insurance. And I realized, at one point that you can do everything right, whatever that is, right? Which we're still trying to figure out. And you're going to improve your odds. But the fact is that what might happen, particularly if you have a family history, is maybe you'll start to have problems later in life than you might have otherwise had. Mm-hmm. Or maybe when you do have problems, they won't be as serious, and maybe something that might have been fatal, you might survive. And things like that. And that's pretty significant. But I think what sometimes people get the idea is fill in the blank, I exercise, I eat right, whatever it is. So I'm invincible. And it shouldn't happen to me because it's only going to happen to chain smoking, donut eating, you know what I mean? And it's not going to happen to me. And that is delusional, right? Because lifestyle is obviously very important, but it doesn't make you invincible. And genetics is powerful, right? Mm-hmm. So that type of thing. So I think it's sometimes the way I say that is to help people to have more realistic expectations. Mm-hmm. So
when I start complaining about, to my wife that I'm doing everything right, I have a sauna, I do a daily sauna, which is supposed to help with your heart health, take vitamin D3 with K2, do all the things, eat well, and she goes, but Carl, look, if you didn't do those things, you'd probably be dead already. Then it kind of brings me back to reality.
Yeah. Well, going back to my insurance days, we only sell you critical illness insurance, if you're healthy enough to qualify.
Yeah.
And yet we pay claims, right? In other words, we're still paying a lot of claims. And if you were really sick, we would decline the application. Mm-hmm. Right. So to me, that was sort of the wake up call where you go, you're thinking, you have to have your expectations. there. So, but your wife, I think, is a wise woman.
She is. She's much wiser than I am.
So I always say my wife is wise with the possible blind spot that she married me, but thank goodness for that.
I agree. Same case here.
So when you were taking exercise science at Brigham Young University, what did that look like? Did that have a strong influence on the steady state sort of view, or did it also have strength training?
It was a mix. It had a lot of an aerobic component to it. Of course, exercise physiology, when you take that course, you're talking about how your respiratory system works and your cardiovascular system works and all that. But I remember most of, and then, your kinesiology, biomechanics, and all those other courses, which are more strength related because it's more how the body moves. But I remember my practical classes for those were more, we learned the Olympic lifts,
Right.
which are dangerous for people who don't do that all the time. And we learned, the regular things. We actually used the ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine's textbook for one of my classes. I can't remember which class that was for. And our final actually for that class was we took the ACSM exercise physiologist certification. And if you pass that, you were certified exercise physiologist through ACSM, which I was. I've since let that lapse, but because I have a different view on certifications these days.
Right.
Only because I feel that they're there so that the company can keep making money off you. But
yeah, I think that's true, and not just exercise. In many
oh yeah,
fields, there's companies, and of course, then in various fields, they also have continuing education requirements.
Yes.
Which is also a large money making
Oh yeah,
endeavor as well.
It's funny you bring that up. I'm also certified through Precision Nutrition as a nutrition coach. And what was it? Like 2 years ago, they wanted to start. It used to be to renew your certification each year. You just took the final test again. And if you passed it, you were renewed for another 2 years.
And probably wrote a check.
Yes, of course. Wrote a check. And then, but then, oh no, wait, there was no check involved. That's what was interesting. There was no check involved. But they had decided that they wanted to change it so that there would be continuing education requirements and a check involved. And everybody got very upset. It was just mass pandemonium on their social media, and they decided and they pulled back from that. So it's still just having to take that test every 2 years to continue to keep your certification without paying more, which is nice, but I can't see that lasting for very long.
Well, I mean, in the defense of these various organizations, I mean, they have to be economically feasible.
Exactly.
In some way, shape, or form in order to survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, as a tennis, so you still play recreationally or competitively?
I still play mostly recreationally, or I play against, I also coach a high school team here, our local high school team. And I play a lot against the 14 through 18-year-olds.
Okay.
Still hold my own against them. So that's pretty good for a 62-year-old.
Yeah, that is very good.
So
see, the one good thing about getting old, you and I are very close. I'm 63, is I always like it now. If I would have been 25, when I post my videos about working out and stuff like that, if I would have been 25, they'd go, but now they go, oh, look at that guy, he's 63. So I've come to the conclusion that after a certain age, you have to start lying about your age the other way. Because if you say you're 20 years younger, people look at you and say, oh, he didn't look too good. But if I tell people I'm 89, they'll be really impressed. Oh, look at that. That guy's amazing. So,
I just tell the kids I'm really old.
Yeah. Well, from their point of view, you're doing 14, 18 years old. If you were 33, they'd think you were really old.
True.
Right. Now, have you found strength training to help you with your tennis game?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I've introduced some HIIT style training to the tennis teams. I do both the boys and the girls. I was the head coach for a long time. I tried to retire from doing that, so I could get more involved with my HIT business. But they had a really hard time finding another coach. So they came to me, the school came to me asking me if I could continue to coach. So I said, sure. So, but now they finally have found someone else, but now I'm just doing it on a volunteer basis. So now I do it for nothing, for just the sheer fun of it. But yes, I have introduced HIT style training to them. How much it's been embraced, I'm not so sure. But as far as my tennis, a couple of years ago, I remember sometimes we play this game where it's called short court tennis, where you play just within the service boxes over the net. And we used to play this warm-up game at the beginning of practice when everybody was just showing up, where there'd be one kid across the net or two kids across the net, and they would just kind of like do some touch and feel drills where they just lightly hit the ball over the net and so forth. And that the whole thing was to see who could get the point. If you dink shots over, like for drop shots and so forth. And I remember I was playing with one kid and he hit a drop shot. So I had to run all the way up to the net. And as I planted my right foot, I thought I blew out my knee. I was just in severe agony. I was just really bad pain. But what I ended up doing is I ended up pulling my anterior tibialis, because that's what decelerates you.
Right.
And man, that was sore for weeks. I never knew that one muscle could be so painful and be that way. That led to me getting an anterior tibialis machine, of course. And so I've really strengthened that. And with the leg training I've been doing, I find it so much easier. When I give lessons, I'll go out sometimes with some of my older clients, my adult clients. They'll just want to hit for a lesson or something. They'll say, well, Carl, let's just hit today. I just need to work on my ground strokes. And I'll say, okay, so, I have to hit with them the whole time. And they're taking multiple breaks. And I'm still going.
Right.
So, I know it has helped my game.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, did you get the hammer strength anterior tibialis?
I did not. Unfortunately, Drew Bay will get mad at me.
Oh,
I have the Titan Fitness one.
Well, I'd have to look that one up because I'd be interested, because I can't find a hammer strength one anywhere.
Yeah.
You're happy with the Titan one?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with it. Drew said that the strength curve was off, and he had purchased one, but he ended up returning it and getting the hammer strength. And because when he got it, I told him I liked it, but he found that the strength curve was off. But I don't know. I think it's okay. As far as for working, it works my anterior tibialis very well.
Well, I mean, there's two ways of looking at it. It's maybe not as good as the hammer strength, but it's a lot better than not having one.
Exactly.
I guess you can work them, and I do work that using time static contraction. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I'd be interested to find out. Now, tennis is a sport. Of course, it has an injury named after it, tennis elbow.
Yep.
And I assume that all court sports are hard on the knees because of the lateral forces that you're subjecting your knees to. Around here, and I suspect this is a phenomenon that's not just local, but across Canada, certainly North America, pickleball is becoming a very popular sport. And
here too.
What's that? Here too.
Here too, yes.
And it seems to be sort of attractive to an older audience, because I guess in some ways it's not as difficult as tennis and whatnot, and I'm sure it's a lot of fun. But my concern is I'm actually thinking about doing a quick thing called "Beware of Pickleball," is because again, because people are getting into it because A, it's fun, and B, it's great exercise. It's a good way to get in shape. But I'm thinking if I'm an older person, particularly if I'm carrying some extra weight, that it's almost a surefire way to put some stress on those knees that I'm going to be needing in my 60s, 70s, and 80s. Would you concur that?
Yeah, I think so. mostly in the United States, especially out where I live here in the Intermountain West, we have hard courts on tennis, so those are tough on your body. They can beat you up because they're just running on cement the whole time. The thing about pickleball is that it has to be on a hard court because they use that wiffle ball. The only way that wiffle ball is going to bounce is if it's on a hard court.
Right.
So yeah, I have played some. I've had some guys invite me out to play pickleball, and I enjoyed it. What's nice is going from tennis to pickleball is very easy.
Right.
So I was able to pick it up very easily, but it could still be tough on your body if you're out there playing a lot.
Yeah, interesting. So when you took the strength certification from Cooper, I'm assuming that it was the standard, and I forget the guy who first came up with it, the 3 sets of 10 and that type of thing. Now, did they also talk about Olympic lifts, or was it more just the basic 3 sets of 10?
It was more basic. They didn't touch the Olympic list at all at Cooper. It was more for the general public. The thing, when my class at BYU was actually taught by the football strength coach, the head strength coach.
Okay.
And of course, football uses a lot of the Olympic lifts to develop power and speed.
Right.
What they think that's how it's developed
Right.
anyway. So of course he leaned towards those exercises and was very comfortable teaching them. And I think that's why we ended up teaching them. But at Cooper, it was just more for the general public, do 3 sets of, whatever.
Right. Well, and if you stop and think about it, when you look at it, and I've got a book here. I don't know if I think I have it handy. Yeah, this is a book. People who listen to us as an audio podcast. This book, I think, was first written in 1963, right? And it has the Olympic lifts in it because at that time, barbells, was synonymous, right?
Yes.
This was probably predates powerlifting. And so strength, they didn't call it strength training. It was weightlifting and weight training, you see, as a subtitle of the book. But the 3 sets of 10, I think it was DeLorme. That's the guy I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and it was to rehab military people, I guess, initially, correct?
And the first 2 sets were really just warm-up sets, which probably didn't contribute a whole lot, but probably didn't really hurt a lot either. Mm-hmm. And then the 3rd set was more or less, they never used the word failure, but they would say, do as many as you can. When you can do more, add some more weight on the bar. So, and they typically would tell people to train 3 days a week. Mm-hmm. So it had none of these, marathon, workouts 5, 6, 7 days a week and split routines and using explosive lifts and things like that. It certainly didn't emphasize moving slowly, but it wasn't that. So some of those things probably were actually pretty good by a lot of today's standards.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I say is the biggest difference is between actually exercising and not exercising.
Exactly.
After that, and some people listening to this from the HIIT community may get upset with me, but after that, there's a fair amount of hair splitting. Mm-hmm. that goes on, right?
Yes.
I mean, and of course, the safety aspect I agree with, because if you do hurt yourself, you're going to stop, right?
Yep.
So what does your exercise routine look like these days? How many times a week? How many exercises do you generally do?
Okay. I work out twice a week, usually Mondays. Had my workout this morning. Mondays and Thursdays, or sometimes it gets pushed back to Friday. I will do 1 set to failure, and I'll do 10 to 11 exercises usually. Okay. I do more leg exercises because I am a tennis coach and legs are important. Running, right. Definition of tennis is running and hitting balls to targets. Right. So you got to be able to run. So I do a fair amount of leg training, and I do. And I'll split up my upper body. I'll do whole body workouts, but I will split up my upper body workout some on those two workouts. Like
Right.
I might do shoulder press and pull down on one on my A workout, and do chest press and rows on the other workout.
Right. Kind of, okay, vertical and then horizontal.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll do I'll do that, and do I'll do some isolation exercise, some simple exercises, some curls and triceps, and some other small stuff intermixed in there. With my leg exercise, I'll do the anterior tibs, and I'll do some calf raises, and along with the leg presses and so forth, and the leg curl, leg extension. But that's pretty much what they look like.
Okay. Now, do you have somebody put you through the workout, or do you do it on your own?
I do it on my own.
Okay. Now, have you been to a HIIT facility and been through a workout being instructed by somebody?
I have not. There aren't any around here.
Okay.
That's the one thing I have going for me starting my own facility here, my own studio, is that there aren't any. And whenever I mention to people, they say, "Oh, that sounds like such a good idea," especially because my target audience is us, the older generation. So that'll be good. But no, I have not had the opportunity or the pleasure to be trained by someone else. I think I do a fairly good job. I can reach momentary muscular failure. I can do that. I'm a pretty driven individual.
Right.
So I can get there. And I enjoy it. I enjoy pushing myself. I've been training my wife. This is a side note. The famous osteoporosis, Nautilus osteoporosis study. Well, my wife, 2 years ago, she was diagnosed with osteoporosis, and they wanted her to go on some osteoporosis meds. Can't remember the name of the med, and start taking calcium and all of that. And I told her, those meds have some really bad side effects. They can actually ruin your bones if you're on a long time, and the calcium can build up in your arteries and so forth. So I said, this is what we're going to do, and she was eating a pretty much whole food diet like I do. But I said, we're going to start training you in the HIIT method and start training you. And so last Thursday, the day they were initially supposed to do this podcast, her physician actually called her in the morning and said that she's no longer has osteoporosis, but now she's just osteopenic. So she has increased her bone mass and done that. And I think that is just great. Hopefully we can get her to where she's normal next time she has her DEXA scan. So, but I'm a firm believer. And so I've been training her, twice a week also. And she does really well with it.
Good. So now, earlier, before we started recording, you mentioned that when you left the military and you started working sort of in a health management field in outside the military, in private life or public life, not sure how to put that, that you found yourself not enjoying it. And you referred to us not having a health system, but more of a sick system. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you meant by that?
Well, whenever you go to the doctor, be it if you have a cold or a virus or a broken bone, you go there and you go there when you're sick, and they give you something, usually a pill to help you get better, or maybe a splint or a cast or something. It's not preventative in nature. Where so many of the diseases that kill us these days, cardiovascular disease and so forth, are lifestyle diseases. Where if our physicians took the time to sit down and counsel with you, look at what you're eating, what you're doing for exercise, what your stress level is like, how are you sleeping, all these myriad of other things, and you can correct those, chances are you're not even going to need the physician anymore.
Right.
Or only when you're sick. Right. Yeah, only when you are definitely sick with something or hurt. And that's all I ever saw was sick people at the hospital having, 10-minute appointments because their they got to do their productivity. They got to meet their numbers. They got to make not only money for the facility, but they got to make money. They got tons of student loan and debt and everything. So it's a tough world in civilian healthcare. I've really become a fan of holistic healthcare, and but of course, that's a concierge service, and it's expensive, and insurance doesn't cover it. So it's for the select few, but I just got disillusioned with our healthcare system, so I wanted to do something different. That's why I got involved with going back to school and getting an exercise science degree and and looking to train people and help them stay healthy.
So I don't know if you have an opinion on this. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry over the years, give them their due, they've saved lives. They've created some drugs that have absolutely saved lives. But do you think that we may have reached a point of too much of a, I want to say too much of a good thing, but I'm maybe thinking of a better, grasping for a different choice of words. But maybe what I'm thinking is he was good. There's Abraham Maslow says he who is good with a hammer thinks that everything is a nail. So, that we just automatically jump to medication as a society. And in some cases, in defense of doctors, if you will, or the system, sometimes it's a supply and demand, because some people don't want to know.
Exactly.
They
just want that pill.
About changing their lifestyle and exercising and eating different and losing weight. They want, just give me the pill.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. They do.
So it's sort of what's the word I'm looking for?
Catch-22. I don't know.
Catch-22, right? Like one feeds into the other type of thing. And I guess sort of a reflection on our society in general, which is why I think HIIT, if it could be better understood, in a way, has some of that quick fix in it, because you don't have to do it for hours on end, many days a week, right? You can do it in 1 or 2 20 or 30-minute sessions a week, which a lot of people say, I can't be bothered, but if it's only twice a week for 20, 30 minutes, I can do that.
Yeah.
I spend more time, or almost as much time, brushing my teeth, brushing and flossing as I do doing that. So now, so over the years, though, I'm interested, and you saw, I think if you watched a Roger Schwab episode,
I did.
One of the things that I was curious to ask him was, I thought it was interesting that he eventually came to embrace the principles of Arthur Jones and Ket Hutchins and others, when he had been exposed to so many success stories. When you look at the bodybuilders that he knew personally and were surrounded by when he was a judge, that I thought it was a real testament to his ability to sort of take conflicting evidence and still take a good look at it, because you know what I mean? This was so different than what he was surrounded by, and it's pretty rare. Now, for you, having taken the education and things in the military, having the background in steady state activity, was it, well, you mentioned at the beginning when you read Body by Science, at first you thought interesting, but you kind of discarded it somewhat.
Yes.
Maybe discarded, that was my words, not yours, but so was it a bit of a process coming around to your current thinking?
Oh yeah, it was. At first I thought, having come from a big time cycling background where you're hammering for hours on end on a bike and you're always trying to do more because more is better. I've always, and that's a lot of my personality, is that if a little is good, more is better.
Right.
And I
don't try cocaine.
Definitely. So I thought, well, how can this work? But I put it to the test, and in theory, one set to failure where you work all the muscle fibers and you do a major inroad. Yeah, that sounds good. I had a little hard time getting over that and thinking, yeah, that's going to work. But then I thought, yeah, but if it does only 80%, where we know it's probably a little more like 90% of the same as doing multiple sets. I thought, well, even if it just does that, I'm still doing more than I was doing strength wise.
Right.
So if I can get stronger and get leaner, I'll get healthier. And
Right.
and that's what, so I thought I'd give it a try and do it. And I have found that to be so.
Right. So it's just a matter of you're open-minded. You probably weren't convinced at first, but you thought, I'll give it a try and see if there's
Exactly.
anything to it. So good
Yeah.
for you.
I started out using a commercial total gym, a GTS model. You're probably familiar with Ben Pacheco. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
What's his name?
Dr. Ben Pacheco. I think, I can't remember.
Vince, but the guy who first started Super Slow, is that the guy?
Yeah, he's the guy who told Ken Hutchins to do 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off.
Yeah. I didn't know he was a doctor.
Yeah, he is. Maybe it's just a PhD, but I thought he was a doctor. I have his book back here. But he in his book that he wrote, there was a whole section on using the total gym to do HIIT training. And while I was in the Air Force, I'd go down
the
to
total gym. Sorry to interrupt you. The total gym is the thing that what's his name? The martial arts guy endorsed forever, right?
Yes. What's his name? I can't remember his name now.
Yeah. Two old guys can't remember the name here.
Chuck. Yeah, Chuck.
These were bad, eh?
I can't remember.
From with Bruce Lee fighting. With
yes,
Bruce
all the martial arts stuff. Yeah. Chuck Norris. There you go.
Norris. That's right. There we go.
Yeah. So, but they have commercial models in every physical therapy department, I guess, in the world, because they're very good for rehab. So I used to go down when I was in the Air Force working in the hospital. I'd go down on my lunch break and sometime work out on their total gym just because it was close. And I didn't have to go across base to go to the fitness center and take more time out of my lunch break. And so I was familiar with that piece of equipment. And when I saw that he had that, I said, oh, that's interesting. And then I found a used commercial model for sale at a great deal. So I picked that up and I started initially on the total gym. Right. And doing HIIT on the total gym, and found that to be really good. The only thing lacking on the total gym is that the leg exercise and the resistance for your legs, is not where it needs to be, for that. But you could do all upper body, everything you needed to do. Eventually, that led me to looking for other things and getting more educated in HIIT. And I came across Simon Shawcroft's HIIT Uni. Right. And I thought, oh yeah. So I signed up for his PT, personal training certification. Not that I'd had other certifications, but I just wanted to see what it was all about and saw him using the David AIO, the all-in-one. And I said, well, that was a cool machine. I just have a small space. If I could, get my hands on something like that, it would be great to use because I could do my own training and eventually train others. And was able, we've talked about this before. I was able to find one used through, now I'm doing Bill
Casto.
Yeah, Bill Casto. I was just drawing a blank there. To Bill Casto.
I think it's his birthday today.
Yeah, it is. I saw that on Facebook. Yeah. Initially I had contacted David Health Solutions and asked them about purchasing one from Finland, but that was really, really expensive. They said it'd probably be like $30,000 to get it here. And I thought, well, that's kind of more than I wanted to spend, but he had one that was brokering for someone in Peoria, Illinois. And, I got with him and we worked it out and I ended up purchasing it, having it shipped here. And that's what's behind me, of course, you can see that. But I've enjoyed that machine and doing HIIT on that. and but once again, the weight stack goes to 120 kilograms, which is 265 pounds more or less. So for legs, it can get, it's fairly good, especially if you're doing, real strict hit.
Right.
But you can max out that on legs pretty easy. But I've found I've had to go to unilateral leg training for that on that. But but I enjoy the machine. It's a good little machine.
But even if I mean, a number of things you could do too. You could do like a hack squat with just body weight and then get on it.
Yep. Yeah.
Because, and you'd be effectively doing pre-exhaustion.
Yep.
And then that weight stack will start to get real heavy, or, do J reps and things like that. Now, cycling, I have a question, selfish question here. Well, actually, they're all selfish questions. But, with cycling, I have some clients who cycle. So a lot of people who are former runners gravitate towards cycling because it's easier on their knees and whatnot. But I perceive, maybe that's wrong, I suspect that one of the issues with cycling, other than the fact that it is, very high repetition, is what about the pelvis? Because you're basically alternating and your pelvis is doing like this the whole time. What kinds of issues do cyclists wind up with, or is it, what should you watch for? If somebody was saying to you, I want to get into cycling, what kind of injuries should I watch for based on your experience? What do you think is common?
Well, when you talk about the pelvis moving, actually you want your seat set at a height so your pelvis isn't moving.
Right.
Okay. So that when your pedal stroke, when you're at the bottom of your pedal stroke, there's still a slight bend in your knee.
Right.
So that, and then actually when you pedal, you push but pull also, because with the clipless pedals they have nowadays, and they used to have cages, with cleats, but the clipless pedals, as you push the other, with one leg, the other leg is pulling up. So you're exercising both the negative and the positive, if you will. Okay. Well, one leg is going through it, but and the pelvis. Most of the injuries I see in cycling are from falling off the bike.
Right.
I got into cycling because I was doing a lot of running, and my knees no, it wasn't my knees, it was my ankles started bothering me.
Right.
And I thought I was getting arthritis, but so that led me into cycling, and just the sheer joy of being able to go further and farther and faster than running really got me hooked on cycling. But the only injuries I've actually had in cycling is when I've crashed, gotten off. But I never had any overuse injuries, not myself. That's not saying that those aren't common. I mean, that's going to happen. If your bike's not set up correctly, if your saddle's too far forward or too far back, of course, you're going to put pressure on your knee. Different kinds of pressures.
Those settings are really important.
Oh yeah, bike setup.
And I'm with you. I haven't ran in years, but I remember when I did run decades ago now, it's enjoyable to run down a nice trail and be moving and going for a bike ride. I mean, you're right. I mean, I had a client, he hasn't been back lately, other circumstances, but he bought himself a bicycle, and he was going to start biking. Of course, I'm out in the country here, and there's nice country roads with little traffic and stuff like that. But this gentleman was, I believe, 74 years old. And I'm thinking, when I was a little kid and I wiped out on my bike, it was bad, but, I was a little kid. But, when you're 74, if you fall down walking, it may be bad. But if I'm biking and I hit some loose gravel or something, and I go down at even 15, 20 miles an hour, I'm getting hurt.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah. That's, you probably heard, that President Biden, fell on his bike. It was all over the news, but he fell on his bike because he was in clipless pedals and he couldn't unclip. So he kind of just fell over. It wasn't,
Right.
it wasn't a bicycle accident. Well, and people made fun of him for that, and that he's in bad shape or whatever. But actually, he's in pretty good shape because he didn't break anything, which I found to be kind of amazing.
Yeah. So it's more like the Artie Johnson tricycle one from Laughing,
Yeah, exactly.
just sort of fell over. Yeah, I mean, anybody at that age, I don't know how old he is, but he's an older person. Anybody at that age who has any kind of fall and doesn't hurt themselves is either in some kind of good shape or got really lucky,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So
That's why strength training is so important. Got to keep those bones strong. Not only the muscles, but the bones,
yeah.
the
Well, you
ligaments.
mentioned I can't remember now if it was before we started recording or since. You mentioned that one of the things that motivated you is you saw your in-laws in there as they older, that they deteriorated rather quickly after retirement or after a certain age, or was there an event that precipitated that?
Yeah, after it was mainly my father-in-law who really deteriorated bad. My mother-in-law kind of went too. She had some other issues. She had some pretty bad not osteoarthritis, but rheumatoid arthritis that kind of crippled her up, and it was tough for her to do things. But my father-in-law, when he retired, he was an electrician all his life. And when he retired more or less to the couch and watched TV. And they lived in a 55 and older community, so he didn't have to get out and do any yard work anymore. There was nothing really for him to do, and he didn't have any other interests really. He just didn't have any hobbies, or was never into fitness or anything. And I just watched as he slowly deteriorated over the years, and it just got to the point where he couldn't do anything really. I mean, it was just a bag of skin and bones. And and I'm not brave enough to get old, I think. I think I'm chicken. I don't want to end up that way. I want to still, we all still feel like we're 16 mentally.
Right.
But physically, of course, we're going to deteriorate. And I'm trying to stave that off as long as possible. And that's what people need to do. Otherwise, it's just bad news.
Well, it's the saying about lifespan versus health span.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, what's the point? I mean, the one thing, earlier I talked about my background in the insurance industry, and we would call certain events life-changing events. And the life-changing event goes something like this, right? Grandma was doing fine, and then she fell and broke her hip, and she never recovered. It was downhill from there.
Yeah.
And that is a very common story. As a matter of fact, the mortality rate after broken hips, within the 6 months to 2 years, is extremely high.
Yes.
So interestingly, earlier I was talking about how the fitness industry may have oversold itself in some ways, or maybe just people are hearing what they want to hear, where people think if they live right, they're going to live forever and be invincible. It doesn't work that way. And I remember hearing somebody say that living longer was not necessarily associated with strength training. And of course, now that can be confounded by a whole bunch of different things. And that may or may not be true, but I think if you can avoid that life-changing event that I referred to, then to me, you got to be increasing your odds. And even, if you do fall, or if you trip, you're more likely to catch yourself before you fall. Or if you do actually fall, you're more likely to break your fall. Because what happens with older people who are not fit is they fall like a tree.
Yes.
And they just fall and shatter their hip, or I don't know if it's worse. I was going to say worse, but equally or very seriously, they hit their head. Right, which is there. So whereas if you have, or often they'll break a wrist or things like that, which may not sound life-threatening, but you break a wrist when you're 82, that wrist can take a long time to
Yeah.
heal, right? And
Yeah.
and then it's so important. So staying strong, it's got to be good.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up that balance. I was just reading, I think it was yesterday, I was reading about the fallacy of balance training, like on Bosu balls and wobble boards and so forth, where what we really need is strength, because you need to have the
Right.
strength to catch yourself. You need
Yeah.
to, that's where it's at. So, I just go to the store and I watch, and I do people watching, and I'm watching people who are, just shuffling along and thinking, I'm just thinking, man, they I wish they had more strength,
Right. Yeah.
because they would be so much better off. Not that it's the cure all for everything, like you said, um, but it plays a great big deal.
Michael Petrella, you know that name.
Uh-huh.
He's a big believer in keeping it simple. And when he introduces people to what he does, potential new clients, and I'm sure he doesn't keep it quite this simple, but he's sort of summarized by saying, all else being equal, a stronger you is a better you. And I'm going to make you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, people, it's kind of like a pretty hard to deny. There's no downside to being stronger, right?
Yep.
It's going to help you in a lot of ways, and there's no question about that. I agree, strength training, the balance training, the fallacies and everything else. But one of the things I'm been pondering and thinking about doing is, I think what some of those things might do, provided they don't injure you in the process of doing it, like on the Bosu ball or whatever it is, is if people believe it and it gives them greater confidence. That greater confidence, because did you ever notice if you're on a slippery surface and you're afraid to fall, you're more likely to fall? Because
Yes.
do you know what I mean? Because
Yes, I do.
you'll second guess yourself and you'll take little baby steps and things like that. So I think where some of that comes from is the confidence part of it,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's warranted or not. And that's
Yeah.
why some people would argue that it does work. And I do think maybe sometimes the confidence aspect of it does need to be given some credit for that, right? And people believe in it. But if you could get people to have the same confidence as a result of being stronger, then it's much safer way to get there, and surely much more effective.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's probably some neurological adaptations that come from those too, but I still think strength is a big one.
Yeah, no doubt. So now, as you look at starting your business, what are your goals? Do you hope to, you've got a number of clients that you'd like to train? Would you like to make this a sort of a full-time thing, possibly expand, whatnot, or you'd be happy with sort of training a few people? What are your goals? Have you given that a lot of thought?
I've given it some thought. First off, I'd like to start small. I just need to get some clients coming in, which hopefully the economy hasn't scared people off. It's kind of crazy these days, but I don't know if that's affected you at all. But it's kind of crazy. But I would like to start small and work up to. I'm not sure if I want to be full time.
Right.
At this point in my life, I haven't been a full-time tennis instructor. So, I've been taking it kind of easy. I'm in a situation where I'm lucky that I have my Air Force retirement, that we have no debt, we own our home, so we're in a good place financially,
right,
that I can do whatever I want. So, and being that my studio is in my basement, that, of course, my overhead is virtually nothing. So if I can get a few clients, that'd be great. I have thought, though, if it really takes off, I wouldn't be against, starting a larger business. and getting a full line of medics or something, or, whatever equipment, and getting other people to train and so forth.
Right.
I just need to see where it takes me.
Well, the nice thing about your situation right now is because you don't have overhead and whatnot. I mean, the economy, I mean, people are spending a lot of money on things now. And of course, people will at some point perhaps have to make some choices. And the thing too is, so how large a community are you in? How many people would there be there?
Oh gosh, I can't remember, but when we first moved here, we moved here because there was a 4-way stop sign down the road. That was it. And now it has really grown. I mean, it's huge now. And I don't know what the figures are in our town size right now, but it is large. I don't know if you're probably not familiar with Utah, but down the I-15 corridor, the eastern side up from I-15 to the mountains was really built up, but the west side didn't have as much infrastructure, or wasn't as built up. But now that's all building up, and that's where I live now, and it's just getting huge. So it's all new construction, new businesses, new homes, and the IT business here is like second to California, I guess, and especially where I live in the Lehigh, Saratoga Springs area. There's a lot of the big, well, Microsoft used to be here, not Microsoft, but Micron, with the chip building, and Adobe. You can just go down the list of all the semiconductor companies and just the various IT companies. And so there is a good amount, and those programmers and stuff make some good money. They're buying some nice houses here, some big houses. So and we have a few older 55 and over communities that they've built since too. And a lot of those people have more disposable income, and that's more of my target market anyway.
So the number, whatever it is, because you think about it, if you get 20 to 40 clients, you will be probably as busy as you want to be.
Yeah, especially since it's just me.
And what the population is. So I'm sure, and of course it becomes more and more important, as with an aging community. So I'm sure that if you put your name out there, and when I first talked to Doug McGuff about doing this, he said, it'll take you a little while to get to 10 or 15. I forget, don't quote me quoting him. But then once you get, to 15, 20, then you'll get a 40, 50 really quickly, because then it starts to be referral. It hasn't come true exactly the way he said it, but then there was a pandemic in there.
Yeah.
So I am pretty busy, but not as much as he predicted. But I mean, the last 2 years, some of it we were completely locked down, closed, things like that. So that changed things. So I'm pretty happy with the way things have gone, the way it is, and I'm confident that it'll go. And you and I are similar. I had a previous career in pensions, and I'm working out of my home. So, it's a business / hobby, and I'm having fun with it and making a difference in people's lives. Do you have closing words, Carl? Things that you would message to people who could be your prospective clients? Anything at all you can think of you'd like to leave us with?
I just wish I had known about the importance of strength training sooner in my life, and not been hammering out on the bike or the road all the time. That I had taken the time to develop myself physically, muscularly, so that I can't remember what podcast or whatever, I can't remember where I'd heard it, but like exercise with your 80-year-old self in mind. That's so important that
I like that.
We're living older, we're living longer. You don't have to do it all now when you're young, but exercise smartly now, and prepare for the future when you're going to be old and you're still viable, can do things. And I just think that that's important. And that's what I'm trying to do now. Like I said, I'm living in fear of getting old, and I want to age gracefully. I want to have that, that they call it compressed morbidity, where you live healthy life, you have an illness, and you die.
Yeah.
I don't want to hang on.
Make love to your wife, go to sleep, and not wake up.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's my ideal, but that's the way I want to live, and more people need to do that.
Right. Oh, that's great. That's good. And I'll remember that. Exercise with your 80-year-old self in mind. That's worth its weight in gold.
Mhm.
I would thank you very much for taking the time today. And I look forward, of course, to hearing about your success as you move forward, and wish you well. And I'm sure, of course, we'll be in touch on social media and whatnot. And I wish you the very best.
Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate, I've admired what you've done. We're in such a similar situation, and I've been following you for a while, and hopefully I can get to where you're at.
Well, I'm sure you will. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
Thanks again. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.